right, it's 3 o'clock. We'll give a few more minutes. I know Councilwoman Simon may be delayed, and I'm not sure about Councilman Schron. Have you heard back from him, Janine, or?
Hi, Nan. No, I haven't heard back from him since that email earlier.
All right, we'll give him a few minutes and then we'll get started.
Nan, I'll send him a text too.
Oh, thank you. That'd be helpful.
Okay, we are streaming live on YouTube, so whenever you're ready, Nan.
And we do have a quorum, I think, too, don't we?
Yes, you do have a quorum.
All right. Well, then why don't we get started? I'd like to call to order the Council Operations, Intergovernmental Relations, and Public Transportation Committee meeting. It is Tuesday, March 30th, 2021, and 3:01 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Schron. Mr. Schron is absent at the moment. There is a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair, no one submitted any comments.
All right, committee members, if you would review the minutes from the September 22nd meeting. If you've had a chance to review them, I would ask for a motion to accept.
So moved. Sweeney.
Second, Miller.
Thank you. All in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no nays. The minutes are approved. Thank you all. Okay, there were no matters referred to committee, so we are pleased today to welcome our Inspector General, Mark Griffin. He is, excuse me, he is going to give us a report on the semi-annual July 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 Agency of the Inspector General. So would you please come forward, Mark, and give us your presentation.
Madam Chair, members of council, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have a chance to talk with members of council. And as you know, twice a year, we prepare a semi-annual report talking about the activities of the Agency of the Inspector General. And then I'm always delighted to come and talk about what we've been doing, how we've been trying to represent taxpayers and answer questions, because as we ask questions of council and of the county, we are absolutely open to questions, and I enjoy these conversations. And so if you will bear with me, I will try to share my screen if I can do that. And I believe Councilwoman Simon is present.
Oh, good.
So if that's possible. At least I thought I could share my screen.
Hey, Mark, if you go down to the arrow at the bottom, it should be green. It says share screen. You should be able to.
Okay, bear with me as I share screen. Okay, great. And go there and share, and hopefully everyone sees the start of a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to try to shift to presentation mode to start from the beginning. Is that appearing on everyone's screen? If I could just get a thumbs up from somebody. Great.
Yes.
Okay. So this is our discussion of the semi-annual report for the second half of 2020. It discusses the activities in that 6-month period. But of course, you know, my conversation here today is to anything that the council members want to talk about. And I would encourage you, usually I ask that, you know, respond to questions as at the end, but with the chair's indulgence, you know, I'm certainly open to questions as they come up. And so with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's happened in the last 6 months. One of the issues has been, of course, that we live in a pandemic COVID situation. And so as with every other department in the executive branch, we were asked to make budget cuts. And so we were able to do that and to operate a little bit more leanly and more efficiently. We were able to cut 14.6% of our annual budget. And we did that really starting in April when we were first requested. And so although that's a 14.6% on an annualized basis, we were actually able to cut more than that during that period of time. And so we did that by allowing unfilled staff positions and in particular transitions from full-time to part-time. And so we've had 2 of our staff members go to part-time, and that's resulted in savings in terms of salary and benefits. We also eliminated our travel and we eliminated training and education in order to meet the COVID pandemic situation that we're all faced with. Certainly as our neighbors and our taxpayers are forced with cuts, we had to do that as well. And so we are all in this together, and this is my agency's commitment to trying to be as efficient with our neighbors' dollars as possible.
Madam Chairwoman,
Yes,
hi, Mark, or Mr. Inspector General. Just got a question, and with your indulgence, I'm allowed to ask them in the sequence, Madam Chairwoman. I didn't get an answer.
absolutely. I think that's the best way. Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
and I'll try not to be too annoying, but just with the information that we got the other day or even today, that the furlough folks are gonna, the money's gonna be reinstated to the folks that were furloughed. How's that gonna happen to the people that went part-time? How does that impact them? Because they were full-time, they weren't furloughed, but they went part-time. Does that impact them at all? Is my question.
I can't speak for other county departments. In my office, the furloughed members, the part-time members did not take a furlough, and so they wouldn't have an extra compensation to make them whole. But certainly anyone in my office who was required to take a furlough and lost income as a result, I would expect them to be made whole based upon not the leverage, but the degree of discretion that the executive has given to us.
And thank you. May I have a follow-up, Madam Chairwoman?
Of course, go right ahead.
Thank you. Just so with the pandemic, part of your cuts were the 14 point, I think 6 or 8% was taking 2 full-time people and putting them to part-time. And it was caused by the pandemic and the furlough. Are they going to get back to full-time now?
So let me just say that one of them was caused in part by the pandemic. The other was discussed as things were going, and I'm very lucky to have an extremely talented lawyer on my staff, Delonte Spencer Thomas, who is now going part-time between us and Case Western Reserve Law School. And so that was something that actually we had been discussing for a while, and we were going to fill his position. But once the pandemic hit, we did not. I would say that as we get back to normal, I would hope to fill that position. I do think, and as we talk about kind of our investigations, we're a little bit lower than we would like to be, and so I would hope to fill that. I would hope to fill that position. And similarly with the other transition, I think that position will probably stay part-time.
And thank you very much. I don't mean to be pushing, but since it's so fresh with the furlough and people's incomes or their quality of life to be able to take care of their family has changed. Furlough is only one of the things, just thinking it through now, going to part-time and actually losing your job. Those are all kind of different things I want to think through. So you just happen to be the person that I began the discussion with. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sweeney. The other thing that I would say about the COVID situation is that we learned that it was difficult, and yet we gained from it at the same time. And so some of our staff and some of our procedures, people have been actually more efficient working from home. And so, I think when we come back, we will be coming back to a new normal where we'll try to balance how to be most efficient with some limited amount of work from home, but then bringing the staff back together, the vast majority of the time in terms of building camaraderie, transfer of information, which you really can only have efficiently together in the office, but we'll have a little bit of work from home as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your deference, Madam Chairwoman. I'll try to keep them not as long-winded in the future.
No, and you know, that is, it's welcoming to hear about us talking about post-pandemic and making plans for an open society. And it's just, those are great questions just in itself that we're moving in a positive way. So thank you, Councilman. It's fine. Please continue.
It is
Mark.
exciting to reopen, and I know there was a discussion earlier. I've had my first vaccination, and it just
Yeah.
feels better. So-
Yes, yes. Good.
So in the final 6 months of 2020, we had 55 whistleblower complaints that we received. We initiated 21 investigations, and we completed 22. And I'll talk a little bit about how that compares to historically what we've done. You know, usually every 6 months we complete somewhere above 20 and sometimes significantly more. And so in the first half of this year, actually, we had 31 completed investigations, and in part because actually, as we were working from home, we were able to wrap up even more investigations because the phone wasn't ringing, you know, and my staff was especially efficient. But at the same time, we had fewer complaints and fewer investigations, and so we've fallen down to 22, which is pretty similar to what we've been doing. So we are, although we are slowing at some level, we're maintaining about the same workload in terms of completed investigations. Investigations, of course, always lag complaints. And one of the things that has happened because many of us are working from home and because we're also working from home is that we're getting fewer complaints. And so, you know, we will probably have fewer completed investigations as we go forward.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Miller, go ahead.
I actually had a question on the previous slide, but wasn't able to get it in on time. My question is just whether you had 877,000 as the actual number for the 2020 expenditures. Do you have an estimate as to what you think it'll be for 2021?
I do not. You know, we always come in under budget, and so you know, I would expect that you know, it'll be somewhere in between there. It'll be less than the 1,027,000, but you know, it'll be higher. Training is important, you know, and I think, and obviously, if we get credited back the furlough piece, you know, will be up as well. And again, I hope to fill some of those positions. And so, Councilman Miller, to your point, I don't have a projection other than to tell you I will be under budget as we always have been.
Okay, thank you.
So just as you see here, we're again about where we have been, but likely to drop down as complaints have diminished to us. But one of the investigations that we continue to work on is working with the Department of Development. And when we started this, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, Councilman Miller asked me, well, you know, Mark, do you think there's any way that we can do this in-house? And I said to him, no, I can't imagine that we could do it in-house. I don't think we have the skill sets. We have to hire, you know, we should really hire an outside consultant. And I'm happy to tell Councilman Miller that I was wrong, that the Department of Development staff have really done a great job on pulling their processes together, taking care of their loans, going through and reconciling all of them except for 4. And those 4 are left over from brownfields loans that were made under the county commissioner system. And there are 4 of them that are outstanding to 2 related parcels, Garland Real Properties, I believe that's in Independence, and then the city of South Euclid as well. And so, you know, they're continuing to service those loans. I think in the Garland issue, there's an issue of they're trying to sell that property and trying to determine what the amount is necessary to retire the loan and release the lien. But so they're continuing to work on those. And unfortunately, either beginning with the commissioner's period or during the transition, records were lost to be able to completely reconcile those loans. So that's one of the continuing investigations that we talk about. Another continuing investigation has to do with the Treasury. And as you may remember, in 2019, there were a series of cash thefts from the Treasurer's office, several of which were referred to the Sheriff's Department for criminal investigations. And that led to a review and a set of recommendations. And in terms of reviewing what is left of those recommendations, all of the AIG's recommendations have been implemented with a few exceptions. And so I do want to take a moment to say thank you to council, because again, your support and passing of an ordinance requiring responses from executive departments regarding our recommendations has really been important, because it means that we don't have a discussion or an argument, and they at least respond, even if they don't always agree. And at least in this case, in the Treasury, they have agreed, but they've been unable to implement one recommendation, which is that all cash that comes across the counter should be immediately at the time of receipt placed into an electronic record-keeping system. And because, for whatever reason, our current IT system doesn't permit that, they have instead been manually recording them at the time it comes over and then electronically recording them at the end of the day. That is a tremendous improvement over what had been the practice of keeping cash unrecorded in an electronic system until the end of the week or sometimes later, which was one of the factors that allowed some of the theft to happen. The current system is going to be replaced by the Harris system, and that has, like other computer systems, been subject to significant delays. And right now, it's expected to be online in October of 2022. Meanwhile, in that interim period, the County Department of IT is also working on a global correction that will connect our system to the Ohio State Child Support System. Hopefully that will occur. So you know, it's not good that we're still not doing it immediately, but at least they're doing it at the end of the day. It's a significant improvement, and we will, you know, eventually get to the point where it's automatic and electronic.
Mark, let me ask a question on that slide. There was some concern where the person who was making the payment didn't get their payment recorded, or there was just not a paper trail. So by them electronically recording at the end of the day, that should take that issue away.
Well, so what happens is they now get a paper record, and those records are kept separately, and then there is an electronic input and there's a reconciling of it. And so I believe it was, well, I guess it was before, you know, this lockdown unfortunately has made time melt. Before we went into lockdown, there was a situation of missing money. And the good news about that was they found it immediately, you know, within 24 hours, and they were able to correct it and fix it. So I think in answer to the chair's question, there is now paper record keeping that is tested and reconciled at the end of the workday.
Okay, and recorded in the system, if, say, the paper trail somehow got lost and that person made their child support payment, but they don't have a paper trail, would they see that at the end of the day that was in fact recorded?
They should, yes, because they would match the paper record against the cash received, plus you know, the individual would have their receipt because they get a copy as well.
Okay, well, it is better.
It's better.
Yeah, thank you for your work in getting it that far along, and I think you're right. In another October of 22, it's still another year or so away. We should have this taken care of.
One of the things that the pandemic has caused us to do is transition to or emphasize things that we can do electronically, and one of which is to continue to assist County Prosecutor O'Malley and Treasurer Murray with commercial tax collections. And so in this case, we work with them and they identify commercial parcels where taxes are significantly delayed. And their fishbowl project, they really work with people to try to avoid any issues. But if it's a commercial property and they've worked with them for a while, they'll come to us and say, "Hey, can you be of assistance?" And so we essentially have we'll just call it a nasty letter, which for whatever reason, they then decide that, it's actually kind of effective. And so one of the things that has happened is that we have had an increase in collections, which again, the credit really goes to Prosecutor O'Malley and Treasurer Murray, but we do play a role to assist them. And so in the last 6 months, we set a record of this new project, and we, as a result of our intervention, another 2.7 million was collected during that 6-month period. So that's another way where the COVID situation has had some positive benefits by changing the focus of our operations a little bit.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go right ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Inspector General, I loved your fishbowl reference. That's been around for a very long time. And people are accustomed to it, and it's a very warm feeling that people get taken care of, just for a point of personal privilege there.
And Councilman Sweeney, you're absolutely right. And what's interesting is that under the commissioner system, and the reason it's called the fishbowl is, as you recall, in the old executive building, they were all physically located in a windowed place where everybody could watch in. And for whatever reason, during the transition to our new government system, the fishbowl was disbanded for a period of 4, 5, 6 years.
I'm familiar.
And so it only really came back in really the beginning of 2018, and Prosecutor O'Malley brought it back and said, we're losing all this money. Why are we doing this? And so, he reassembled the fishbowl project, and from time to time we're pleased to help out as much as we can.
Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Sure.
And so, for example, simply in the data that I showed you on the last slide was actually through the end of January, because that money is credited to the prior year. But from February 17th to March 24th, got another $118,000. Again, working with the prosecutor and the treasurer, 7.6 million. Listen, some of these taxes would have been collected anyway. I think our role is to speed it up a little bit. So we're glad to do that. The other piece, and I want to compliment the Fishbowl Project again, which is one of their view is that if you let things go on too long, then sometimes that money never gets collected. And so to the extent that we can help them collect things more quickly, I think it's also the case that some debts that otherwise would never be collectible do in fact get collected because people don't fall too far behind. So
Have you found, Mark, if I may, have you found where those that aren't paying, it's because they can't pay, or because of the pandemic, they have found that their business has been shut down, or they're not able to make their house payment, or whatever situations come up? But I would think that you would hear some pushback on why they can't.
A little bit. So let me just first say that we do not get involved with residential assist them at all in that. I mean, that's, I think, not within our realm. But there's been a mix of things, and they are not, it's the prosecutor's office, which obviously can be scary and can be intimidating, but they really try to work with business owners, and they really try, we only get it when they believe that the money is collectible and the taxpayer doesn't have a good reason to not pay them, because they work to enter into business plans, payment plans, and really to work with people. So the answer to your question is yes. I mean, there has been an impact of COVID. We're not seeing it as much because, by the time it gets to us, they've kind of worked through those issues already.
Good, thank you.
So I have a question or two.
Sure. Go ahead.
Is the Fishbowl Project commercial or residential, or both?
My understanding it's both. But again, my understanding is also that when it comes to residential, I think that they're particularly sympathetic as much as possible.
So the 2.7 million, is that the total that was collected on commercial in the last half from the Fishbowl project, is that correct?
The Fishbowl project is much larger than that. That's only the Agency of Inspector General's assistance with it. So,
Okay,
it is substantially more effective than that 2.7 number.
understood. Okay, thank you.
And this is in response to a question. I can't give you exact numbers for commercial and industrial, simply that there were, at last count, 58,165 delinquent parcels, being a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential. And again, the Fishbowl project really is, they try to play a constructive role. And I think they realize that if they push somebody into bankruptcy, they're not getting any money at all. So, they try to balance the county's needs with the hardship that many of our neighbors are experiencing.
So 58,000 are identified. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
That's good to know. Okay, thank you.
Obviously, investigations are one of the major elements of what we do at the Inspector General's office, but we also try to be preventative instead of simply just being corrective or punitive. We try to avoid that. And so a big part of our role is to provide ethics opinions, secondary employment disclosures, and nepotism, conflicts of interest as well. And so there's some interesting things here, at least I think that they are. One of the issues is that because we're not in the office as much, because our county employees aren't here together, and I think, unfortunately, our economic impact has decreased a little bit. The number of ethics opinions that have been requested from my office have dropped significantly. And so, we would expect that bounces up again. But if you look at, this year of our COVID year versus prior years, it's a third or perhaps half of what it used to be. Less economic activity, and there's less chance for interaction or a need for ethics opinions. But one of those has to do with a revolving door issue that was raised, and the question has to do with a county department where an employee had left and retired. And actually, this is the appraisal department of the fiscal office, and so the employee retired, but he had specific skills, and actually those skills had to do with evaluating agricultural properties. And the fiscal department considered bringing that person back on or hiring his new company. That created a revolving door issue. They came to us. We said, no, that's going to be challenging. And so what they did, to their credit, was they said, well, you know what? We're going to do this in-house. We don't have that many farms in Cuyahoga County. It's a skill set that's important, but rather than continue to pay, an outside entity, why don't we skill up our people here and train our people here? And so that's what they did. And so they avoided the revolving door issue by having increased training. And that will, I think, in the long run, save the county money and increase the skill set of our appraisers here in the county. So,
Well, Mark, that was 300 plus parcels. That's quite a few more to take on. They were able to fold those in without any additional costs?
They were, yes. Yes. So of course, parcels sometimes get assembled, within a particular person. So, one owner can have multiple contiguous parcels. And so, yes, they were able to do that. And given the number of parcels, 300 parcels in the entire county, that's a relatively small part of the workload for the fiscal office. So yes, so they were able to do it. And, I think our role was that we encouraged them to look for a different way, and they found it.
Good to hear. Thanks.
We also try to do ethics education, of course. And so we...
Was there a question? No, please continue, Mark.
Okay. We try to provide continuing education, both in terms of our regular ethics updates, because, we know that the code exists, but people don't really read it. And we try to send out, we have a plain language guide, and we have annual training, and we have onboarding training. But the reality is that if you don't continue to talk about ethics and if you don't continue to provide guidance and rules, people forget about it. So that's what we continue to do. And then the other piece, in order to save money for our county lawyers, is we provide a free lawyers ethics program rather than needing to pay an outside party for that as well. So that's part of our annual ethics training and ethics education piece. We do secondary employment reviews, and you'll see here again a significant drop in our COVID year, in part because secondary employment occurs oftentimes when people are newly hired into the county. Well, we've had a hiring freeze. And then the other piece is there needs to be economic activity going on, and the opportunity for secondary employment has been reduced as well. So I think you can see the impact of COVID with respect to that over the last 3 years. And similarly with conflict of interest and nepotism reviews, we've particularly dropped because when you have new employees, you have a reason to do a nepotism review. But when you limit or put a freeze on new hires, those numbers are going to drop significantly. Okay, just quickly in terms of contractor background registration, we have a total of 1,532 registered contractors, 16 lobbyists, and the bottom number is just a running total. One of the things that we do before registering a new contractor is to make sure they're current on their county taxes. And over the years we've been doing that. That has resulted in 2.6 million of taxes, unpaid taxes owed, because obviously as a county, we shouldn't be giving new contracts and spending county money until they've evened up their accounts with us.
So if I might ask a question on that, do we know how much of the 2,638,000 that we've been able to collect?
I believe that is collected, but I can ask my staff to confirm that. It's my understanding that they don't get their contract because we won't register them until they pay the taxes. So I believe that is collected money, but Councilman Miller, I will confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
And so this is interesting as well, because our background reviews occur it's a 4-year period. So it's really for new contractors. And when the COVID period first hit, you can see there's sort of a drop there. But now, as we've had federal money and additional money come on board, that number has gone back up. In terms of expiring contractor registration, so when we do a background check and approve a contractor, it's for a 4-year period. And so at the end of that 4-year cycle, contractors aren't required to re-register, but they are if they want to continue to do business with the county. And so they re-register at that period. Some don't do business with us anymore, and so they do not re-register, but others do. In terms of our total numbers, when we first started the new county structure, we required everyone who even wanted to bid on a county contract to pay their fee and to register. And so at that time, we had over 4,000 registered contractors, but many of those never had a bid. So when I say contractor, understand that they were potential contractors. And then in 2017, we changed the code so that it was only after you were awarded a contract. And so as a result, the number of contractors registered with us has gone from the 4,000 plus to the 1,700 that was on that prior slide.
Mark, if you wait until they actually receive the bid and then you ask them to register, is that what you're saying?
Yes. So they receive the bid. They're then required to register, and usually it's before it gets to the Board of Control. There are obviously occasional rush contracts where it's approved by the Board of Control pending registration with the AIG.
Any concern that they go through this process and a lot of time has been expended to review these bids and then find out that they're not qualified, that there's a background check that we may have found if they had registered earlier that maybe would have disqualified them to begin with?
There are a handful of those cases, very, very rare. I would say yeah, 1 to 3 times per 6-month period that will come up. And then we work with the department to see whether they really want to go through with the contract or not.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Just the only other thing that I would say in terms of the background checks, I want to thank the Board of Control really for approving the update on our Westlaw software, because when I first started this job, we found that our prior software was not turning up very prominent criminal convictions from the prior public corruption scandal. So we have fixed that, and very happy to move on with that. We do have debarments, and the debarments have a range of situations where, in fact, there are people we should not be doing business with, some of whom have not fulfilled their contractual obligations in the past, some of whom have criminal obligations. And so in 2020, we had 3 of them roll off. We currently have 9 vendors that are on our list, of which 7 will roll off in the next 12 months, and we'll have 2 more that'll roll off in 2023. This process has slowed down a little bit, but we don't expect a huge jump in new debarments in the next 12 months. In fact, I think we'll probably continue to decrease the number of debarred vendors. It will diminish over time.
Those 4 that were in question for the economic development and going back in the 2008, none of them are on this list. Is that right?
Correct. In part because we don't have the records one way or the other. The other piece is that they don't regard those loans as being in default. So they're considered to be good and current loans.
Okay, thank you.
So, on this list here, can you tell me, of the 12 that are on this list, how many were due to criminal problems and how many were due to contract performance and how many were due to things like property taxes?
So I believe on this list, there are no criminal issues. And let me just say, I don't want to speak negatively about any particular vendor. There is one vendor who I believe may have had a criminal background issue, and there is one vendor that has rolled off that had a contract performance issue. Actually, there are, let me just say, of the 12, because I don't want to limit it, because I think that would disclose some of the entities. Actually, I think that there are 3 that are contract performance issues. One that has, I believe, a criminal background issue, and then the rest are tax issues.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is just sort of a review here. I think we've discussed everything on this slide, the property tax initiative, department development, treasury updates, driving records. So again, we're in a COVID period. So several things have happened, one of which is that people are driving less. And the other is that the state of Ohio has extended the expiration date for that. So in a typical 6-month period, we probably have, low teens, 14, 15 employees who are exposing the county to potential liability because they forgot that their license has expired, or perhaps they were out drinking. We always have a handful of DUIs, but this is significantly less. So it's a total of 5 in this past record. And let me talk a little bit more specifically about them. So we had 3 employees with suspended licenses and 2 with licenses that were either canceled or no longer valid. And of those, and again, this is based upon, so we use a service from Progressive Insurance to cross-check driving records. So in two of those situations, the employee was not required to drive. One was actually suspended in error, and so they got their suspension reversed, and then two were no longer employed by the county. So one of the factors of why this number is less is the extension of the expiration date by the state of Ohio, which will end on July 1st. And so one of the things that we anticipate happening is that many Ohioans, not just our employees, but many Ohioans will be surprised because their license will be expired on July 2nd. And, so we're trying to decide, our job is to protect the county, and there's absolutely an element of our office that is big brother-ish, but we don't want to be too big brother-ish. And yet, 55 employees, we don't want their licenses to expire unexpectedly. So we may do some outreach there to say, hey, just take a look at this, be aware, check your license dates so that they don't apply. And so again, the number of violations have been reduced, I think, also because of COVID and social distancing.
Thank you, Mark. And, for Councilman Sweeney's consideration, this has been something I've brought up since I began to chair this committee, that the county is very vulnerable to anyone getting behind the wheel on county time for county driving and transportation from one place to another, and have a suspended license or a invalid license for whatever reason. And so I've asked Mark throughout the time that I've been here to please give a little more attention with our directors to make sure that these employees either know, maybe they don't know, and they should know that their license is expired, or find out why it is suspended for whatever reason. So I really appreciate you drilling down in making sure that these employees are aware. I would say, I am concerned about the 55 employees that you mentioned in your report that were extended, that, of course, diplomatically, but we do want to make sure they're not on the road if they are expired. And for whatever reason, I don't think if they're pulled over for speeding, that the officer is going to care that they were on a time where it was extended and they forgot. And I just don't think and we're then, of course, liable.
We may just send out, rather than focusing on 55 employees, maybe we send out just a generic update to every county employee, reminding them that, hey, check your license because this is going to occur. The vast majority of people simply forget or they're not aware. And so that, to me, that's very different. And then for Councilman Sweeney's benefit, I'm sure that he will recall that we had a county executive who went 10 years without a valid Ohio driver's license. And that's one of the reasons that my office has this responsibility. And I regard that very differently than people who don't look at their birth date and see that it expired this year. So
the only thing, Mark, is that if they got into an accident, as innocently as that employee may be, that they just let it expire and didn't know, if they got into an accident, that could be very detrimental to the county. And
absolutely.
That's why it's not, anything against the employee or, the different levels of why that license expired. The fact is, if it is expired and they got into an accident and it was their fault, and if people got hurt and that license shows up to be expired, no matter what the reasons, we are liable. And that's why it means a lot to me to make sure that we're on top of that.
So this is just kind of my last two slides. We're going to wrap up. One of the things that we said as we were going into this COVID period, we're going to review the emergency no bid contracts. So at the time that we put this out, there were 4 contractors who were unregistered. We're now down to 1. The only contractor that still is not registered is actually Zoom. So we are going to, so we're going to work with them. We reviewed and sent out work from home policies and procedures, and we're continuing to work with law enforcement. I believe what is likely to be one of the last criminal procedures in this current, I don't know if you want to call it wave or sequence or whatever of investigations. There is a trial date set for the end of April, and so I expect to be a witness in that, and there will be. They've also requested documents, and so that's just part of our continuing role. As you know, we do not have any criminal enforcement and are not interested in any criminal enforcement. But what we do is, if something occurs or that we have information, we then refer that over to the professionals over in the prosecutor's office, Ohio Attorney General's office, or U.S. Attorney's office. So that was our prior set of goals. Coming up, we're going to expand our online education and outreach. We're going to try to do more of this because we think prevention is better than curative. We're going to expand our tax facilitation efforts. I think, we've really learned over this 6-month period how to be better and work with them even better. And so I think that's starting to ramp up. I think that's why we hit 2.7 million in the last 6-month period. We're also going to try to, again, focus on prevention. And we're going to look at debarments and contractor reviews and continue to assist law enforcement. So my hope is that by the end of June, the president says that by July 4th, we may be able to have a backyard cookout. But certainly, I hope that we'll be back to a little bit more of a normal status when we start the second half of 2021. So I really appreciate your time, and I greatly enjoy having a chance to talk with you twice a year on this. But I also want to say that I'm always here and available, and so you don't need to wait until these 6-month biannual presentations. Call me anytime.
Mark, a couple quick questions, and I'll open up to the members if they have anything else. Lately, we've been, and I don't know if this is your department or not, but lately we have been tasked with the difference between a no-bid contract and a design-build contract. And the state of Ohio, of course, has encouraged the design-build contracts because they feel it's more accountable and more transparent, but that may be the way it's interpreted. Does your department get involved in that at all, of determining? Yeah.
So I was just having conversations about this. And so let me kind of go back in a little bit in history. So the hotel construction project was finished in 2016. And I only want to talk about the construction aspect, not the current operations, which, given our situation, are challenging. And so we started to take a look at trying to compare that design build program with the construction of the Juvenile Justice Center, and to try to take a look at whether one system was more efficient than the other. And so, we started that for, I want to say really preliminary looks at it. And then we ultimately came to the conclusion that within our department, we didn't really have the skill set for construction analysis. Preliminarily, it looked like, this is part of a conversation rather than I'm interested in feedback. I'm interested in feedback rather than kind of speaking at people, and which I know you don't do. So, in looking at the hotel project, the numbers, frankly, look really quite good, and they do look good, which is that they came in under estimates and under budget. And then the pushback from some places were, oh, well, they were deliberately overestimated to make it look good. So that then required us to then try to analyze, well, is it a fair estimate? Is it not a fair estimate? And that's where we got into a point of, I'm not sure at that time or even today that I necessarily have the people who can make that adjustment or make those judgments as compared to the Juvenile Justice Center. So my answer to your question is ambiguous because I guess I'm not really sure. I don't know that we have the ability right now to do that. It is certainly something that I think is interesting and important to taxpayers because we're talking about significant sums of money, and I think people should want to know what is the most efficient way. You know, back then I made the decision that I didn't think that we really had the skill set to do it. And I think that's kind of the case now.
Okay. So what would you recommend as oversight in accomplishing that goal of making sure, yeah.
So if the goal is to try to evaluate which policy position is better or which system is better, and I separate that from, you know, I mean, I do think that we can review invoices and bills, and you know, once something has been decided, and in particular, you know, do an accounting of minority participation. Those are all things that I think are within our skill set. But systemically, to compare one system versus another, and I'll just tell you what I was thinking, which was, you know, there are obviously there are consultants. There are also graduate students in public policy who have to do studies. That might be an option. I know that, for example, the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard requires its people to have essentially a consulting project that's very quantitative. That might be a source as well. You know, and again, there are obviously private entities that have tremendous expertise where you'll get what you pay for.
Good. Those are great.
But that may be worthwhile given the financial commitment that these projects are suggesting.
Okay, thank you for that. Just curious to know. The last question I have for you is there was a time I thought on your goals to look at late contracts.
Yes.
I know that hasn't made your cut list this time around, and understandably so, but it would be good to know that it's at least on your radar for when we work
So
the ERP and, you know, the Lawson system and all those things are in place. And 'cause I know that a lot of the reasons why they're late is because of the logistical reasons of getting it through the system. But where are you on the late contracts?
at a level of some frustration, and you know, I share your frustration, and I don't want to speak for Councilman Miller, but I suspect he may have some frustration with this as well. I've had conversations with our internal auditor about, you know, how we could move forward with this. And, you know, frankly, with COVID and other situations going on in different departments, that's kind of fallen by the wayside. I don't have a good answer for you on that. It is a source of continuing aggravation. And you know, I think that is something that we need to do a better job of addressing. You know, I've talked about, you know, we've trying to figure out, well, do we do report cards? Do we do, you know, some sort of investigation on a monthly basis of here are the numbers of contracts that came in late? I really don't have a good answer for you on that.
Well, I would ask, and Councilman Miller, I know you've been a part of this too, that, I mean, I can accept, because I've been involved quite a bit with the ERP project in oversight. So I understand the difficulties in working through that process. And unfortunately, where it shows the worst is when it comes for its final stage of being approved. But we will reach a point when the ERP is up and running, that it is efficient, that the Harris is up and running and is efficient. And at that point, we should, I think, put an emphasis on late contracts if they still exist at that time. Because I do believe that we had difficulty with our late contracts before the ERP was up and running enough that it was accepting all of the contracts. So I hope that it's not done or not considered, only delayed until we feel it's appropriate.
It is absolutely delayed. And it is not by any means shoved away. It's just that, you know, I think our confidence level of getting something done and setting a goal for it this 6-month period was one reason that it wasn't on there. You know, it seems like everything is waiting for ERP to finish, right? And that whoever you talk to in the county, when ERP comes, then it'll all be okay. And so, we happen to be on the same floor as the IT department on the 6th floor. And so one of our colleagues over in IT, broke his leg in a skiing accident. And we said, oh, that's okay. ERP will fix that. It can't be an excuse for everything. And I know that we use it as an excuse for everything. I wish I could give you a suggestion on what I think I can do. Part of the problem is our data isn't good on these, and it's been challenging. So again, I don't have a good answer for you.
Well, I can't speak for Councilman Miller, although I know he's been a proponent of wanting to look into this. But as long as we are given contracts that are late, I will always be asking and raise the awareness of, we don't like it. It's unfortunate we're the last on totem pole that we get these, and it becomes an issue. Doesn't seem to be an issue until it comes to us for approval. And then we're 3 months, 6 months, sometimes a year late, that it just didn't get through the system. It was bogged down somewhere in the cycle of approvals. And but I think it's important that we continue to ask and make sure that it's important. And even though we may not be able to zero in on it right now, there will be a day when we will be able to do that and hopefully overcome whatever problems there are beyond the ERP issues. Do you agree, Councilman Miller?
Yes, I totally agree. I would just vouch for that. I'm also frustrated by the late contracts and how many there are, and we just have to continue to focus on this. And I think it's a question of management and anticipation and process, and we have to keep after it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you for that. Members, are there any other questions for our Inspector General today?
Yes, I have a couple of additional questions.
Go right
I'd
ahead.
like to follow up further about the no bid contracts. When you had that on your primary list about looking into the emergency no bid contracts, could you tell us specifically what kind of contracts you were looking at and what determinations you made about those?
Remember, we simply were looking at the issue of whether the county ordinances permit the contractor to be approved without going through a background check, providing that they do it within 30 days of the award of the contract. So the aspect that we were looking at simply was to make sure that they did in fact follow up with that, and that they were in people who we could do business with. So we weren't looking at aspects of whether it was efficient in terms of the contracting process or how the bid was let out. It was the registration process.
Okay, so as I'm sure you're aware, during the summer, the county initiated a process to do some building retrofit projects. And they did a contracting process in which they put out a request for qualifications and had a large number of companies bid on them, and then they chose a smaller number of companies as winning contractors. And then as specific projects came up, if the project was small, they would rotate the job between the contractors. And if the contract was larger, like over 100,000, then they would do a mini bid process among the contractor group that they had selected. And this process had certain advantages in that it There was a lot of participation. We made significant advances on minority participation, and it appears to have resulted in getting new people to bid on other contracts that occurred subsequently to this process. However, this contracting process was repeatedly labeled by Cleveland.com as a no bid contract. And so my question is whether your office has an opinion as to whether this process met the standards of openness and transparency that we desire in our contracting process.
We have not formed a view or an opinion on that, but we are certainly open to having an investigation. And if you, if council or if council members would like that to happen, we can absolutely take a look at it. And, of course, we try to investigate first and form an opinion later. That usually is a better sequence of the process. And so, and I don't mean to make light of a serious, well, I do a little bit, but at least to be funny, but it's a serious issue, and I take it seriously. And so, we would be happy to, if you so requested, to take a look at that and form an evaluation. And, we have lawyers and auditors on our staff that could do that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And in consultation with my colleagues, we'll make a determination as to whether we should make that request.
Okay, anything else, Councilman?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Any other questions from our members of the committee? All right. Well, thank you, Mark. Very, very good presentation as usual.
Thank you.
Lots of different issues that we had not even thought we would be talking about today, 6 months or a year ago. So I believe better days are ahead. I'm a little more optimistic than just the backyard cookout in July. I'm hoping we will be more open than that. And let's hope for a very good report again when we see you in 6 months.
Thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, is there any other miscellaneous business by the members? All right, hearing none, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Mark. And we'll see you again, if not sooner, in 6 months.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.